Welcome back to the channel. If it is your first time here, my husband Dan and I are working toward becoming more self-sufficient before retiring. And one of the things that we're doing is we're doing a lot of experimenting out in our small raised bed garden here. And today we're going to talk about onions. If this type of thing interests you, please consider subscribing to our channel. And guys, like our video, it really helps us with YouTube. Today I have 4 tips on growing big onions. Now, I have to say that I took a little deeper dive into growing big onions, and I was fully prepared to come out here and show you topping of onions and removing dirt around bulbs to help grow bigger onions. But after taking a deeper dive into it, I'm not going to do that. There are several videos on YouTube and even websites that recommend cutting off the tops of the onions to help put energy into building a bigger bulb, but that's not what really happens. In fact, I went to onion grower websites. I went to the website where I got the starts from, and that's all they do is specialize in starts and onions. And none of these places recommend topping your onions, and here's why. The leaves of your onions are what determines how big the onion is going to be. The more leaves you have on your onions, the larger your onions will be. That is because, and if you take a look down here at this onion, you see how the leaves kind of wrap themselves? Every leaf is a layer of your onion bulb. The more you have of these layers, the bigger your onion is going to be. So what you want to do is promote the growth of several of the leaves. Also, as you probably know, an onion leaf is hollow. You can see it here where these leaves have been broken off. And so topping those onion leaves is going to make your onion more susceptible to bacteria and diseases that can get down into the bulb. The leaves are also responsible for carrying the carbohydrates and the sugars down into the bulb. So why would you want to cut that off? So there will be no topping of onions from now on. So the first tip I have for you for growing big onions is pretty obvious. Make sure that you buy the right type of seeds or starts that you need for your area of the country. There's long day, there's short day. You need to select the right kind. Here in Iowa, in Zone 5 in the US, I need long day onions, so I've only selected long day varieties. So that's the number 1 tip. Buy the right type of onions. The second tip is fertilization. You need to add some nitrogen, which sounds counterintuitive because it's a root vegetable. But in order to build more vegetation and leaves on your onions, they need a little bit extra nitrogen. So what I've done is I went to the gardening supply store and I bought some blood meal. Blood meal is a natural fertilizer, and we're going to put it on at about the rate of 1 cup for every 20 feet of onions. And then I've also got bone meal, which has calcium and phosphorus. It promotes that in your soil. So we're going to add some bone meal also. Now, from my deep dive research, you should fertilize your onions every 2 to 3 weeks. But once they start to, like in the last 4 weeks of their growth, you should stop fertilizing and water more. So we'll be going ahead and fertilizing these today with some blood meal and some bone meal. And you can see in this old measuring cup I have, blood meal is nothing more than dried animal blood. So that is actually what it is. This is obviously going in on top of my hay mulch, so I'll just be watering that down in. And keep in mind that you can over fertilize. So you want to do this every 2 to 3 weeks until the last 4 weeks of their growth, when they're concentrating on filling up that bulb. So you want to do it every 2 to 3 weeks until then, and then you want to stop fertilizing and add more water. The third tip for growing big onions is watering. They need at least 1 inch of water per week. And now with our heavy mulching, that helps to hold the moisture in, but you never want to let your onion bed get to be bone dry. That's a no-no. So about 1 inch of water a week, up until the last month of their growth, the last 4 weeks or so of their growth. At that time, you want to stop fertilizing and add more water. So you want to add like 3 to 4 inches of water per week. Give them plenty of water to develop and get that nice big bulb. Now, we've had about 1/2 inch of rain in the last day or so. And I do want to water in the blood meal and the bone meal because some of it is sitting a little bit on top of the hay. So I'll add about another 1/2 inch of water or so and get that down in there into the soil, into the roots. One thing that I've noticed about my onion bed, and I've noticed it in different spots in my garden, but every now and then I see a little mushroom growing, and that says to me that I have some good soil going. So I'm happy about that. The final tip for growing big onions is keeping the weeds down. Onions have shallow roots and they spread out. They don't go deep, they spread out. So you don't want them competing with weeds for their nutrients. And so keeping a nice layer of mulch on there to suppress some of the weeds, and then making sure you're pulling whatever weeds that you see will help your onions get all the nutrients that they need. So you can see here in my onion bed, I have a lot of little weeds growing up in and around my onions. So I'm going to have to come in here and I'll get those pulled today. It's starting to rain out here, so probably stop for now, but I'll get that weeded out of there. One more thing that I just want to mention, and that is I see a lot of gardeners that clear the dirt away from their bulbs, like 2/3 down on the bulb, so that the bulb has plenty of room to get big. But from what I researched, if you have loose soil, you don't have to worry about that. But if you have soil that is a little bit hard, maybe a little bit compacted, then you do need to do that in order for it to have plenty of room to grow big. But I'm not going to be doing that to mine because my soil is nice and loose. So what about you? Do you have any tips for growing big onions? What has your experience been like in growing onions? And we'll be back out here again in the next day or two because we have a heat wave coming. And I'm going to show you some things that I'm going to do to my garden to prepare for a heat wave. It's going to be in the 90s for like a week or so. So really need to protect my brachias and things like that that don't like the heat. So stay with us for that. Hope you're having a great day. We'll see you next time.